So, good morning or good night, depending on where you are, and welcome to another collaboration video of the Shield Doing a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and today I'm joined alone for the first time by Tom, the Green Man, who's sitting right next to me virtually. And we're here because we both love shoegaze. And I think shoegaze is a type of music that doesn't get spoken a lot on the or on YouTube or other medias. And I think it's a very important genre, and I actually love it. So I was speaking to Tom like, hey, let's do a video where we talk about shoegaze bands and what it means to us. So first of all, Tom, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Hector. Thanks for having me on the channel.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about how we got into shoegaze. We'll discuss bands that we love and bands that have been influenced by shoegaze. This is gonna be like more of a chat. Like think of it as a conversation, sipping coffee somewhere. So, Tom, how did you get into shoegaze?
As I say, my tea's gone a bit cold now. So,
Your tea's cold, yeah.
From our previous collaboration just now, that is.
Yeah, we did collaboration on his channel, but yeah, like shoegaze. Like, when did you start getting into this type of music?
That is a very good question for me. It wasn't any specific point in time with me and shoegaze, and I'd love to be able to say it was. The interesting thing with me and shoegaze is in the last 6 or 7 years, I would say I've gotten really addicted to it, like seriously into it. I love it now almost as much as I love my first, real love of music, which is metal and heavy metal. Right? And I love prog a lot as well, but then shoegaze is up there with those for me. So if you follow my channel, you'll know that I'm a big metal fan. I also like a lot of prog, but then I also have a real affinity with shoegaze. So when I first got into it, how I got into it, I think was really when I realized, when I put two and together, what shoegaze actually was, because I didn't even know the name. And in fact, most people in my life, most of my friends and family have never spoken about shoegaze. When I remember having a conversation with my parents, they had no idea what shoegaze was. When I
went, that's strange because shoegaze originated in your country.
The UK.
Yeah.
Right. So back in the 90s, the big thing, and I remember being on a school trip on a bus with lots of other kids from my school, right? It was on a trip to York, I think, in the UK or something. They were all singing Oasis, Don't Look Back in Anger. This was the sort of 95, 96 sort of time. And that just highlights from that time what was really popular then was Britpop.
Yeah, it was Britpop.
Oasis and Blur. Shoegaze was like slightly displaced by it, I think. And it's kind of the way I see shoegaze is it's like the sort of a quiet sibling of grunge in a way.
It is.
From the early 90s, it kind of had to sort of, it was there. It started to get quite popular, but then before it really got massive, it sort of just seemed to lose a bit of its appeal to the masses. So I think that's kind of where for me I didn't really discover it until the internet really kind of till I discovered YouTube basically and started to realize that I was discovering things that I really liked. So I remember sort of seeing I think it was a video that a song by a group called Still Corners that was super dreamy. I don't know if you've heard of Still Corners. They're like a couple, Tessa Murray and Greg Hughes, and they do very kind of dream pop style stuff, kind of really open chords and big spacey sounding songs, lots of kind of more electronic elements in some of their music as well. And they were like a bit of a kind of, when I discovered that song, I can't remember which thing was called The Trip or something. And that was back in I think that came out back in 2013. So I can hardly call myself a lifelong kind of shoegaze fan, but that was what opened the door to me into realizing, hang on, I've just missed all this style of dreamy music. And that put up suggestions for other dream pop stuff. And then that was like my avenue, because dream pop and shoegaze are pretty much like,
they're pretty much like brother and sister.
Indistinguishable, brother and sister. And that got me into, bands like Slowdive And I was like, when I discovered Slow Dive, I was just like, where have you been my whole life? Slow
Oh yeah,
Dive
they're
and
so good.
just like instant love, you know. I was like, this is the music of, you know, it may be as I've kind of grown older as well. I think maybe that taste for shoegaze is more there. You know, when you're young, you generally maybe gravitate a bit more towards upbeat stuff, and a lot of shoegaze is quite kind of downbeat and
Yeah.
not necessarily all of it. Some of it's quite sort of energetic, and you know, the more hypnotic psychedelic stuff is quite energetic. You know.
Yeah, like a band like Ride, they're
Yeah.
more like psychedelic. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yesterday I was watching on YouTube some like documentaries about shoegaze, and there's this YouTuber that's called Stained Glass Stories, and his channel is all about shoegaze. So I watched a couple of his videos. So yeah, that's a prop to him, and really interesting stuff. And shoegaze started like in the like grunge and shoegaze were coming up at the same time, and I saw like a video of like what are the differences. Like shoegaze is there's more distortion, but there's more dreamlike, and grunge was like more aggressive. And apparently in grunge, like the lyrics were more important than in shoegaze, because sometimes in
Yes.
shoegaze, because of the distortion and the pedals, yeah, you couldn't tell as much of what they're singing. And it's interesting because like when I was growing up, I think I listened to some shoegaze, but I didn't know it was shoegaze. I just called it rock
Yeah.
or
Do you know?
alternative
Do you know
rock.
where the name came from? Right, from
Yes, I
people
was
looking down.
because of the pedals. They were looking a lot at the pedals and the shoes, and that's why shoegaze, because of the dreamy factor, and that they're looking at the pedals. And I thought that's hilarious, because grunge is more like it's grimy, it's the floor. So it's very interesting how they came up with those names. And I was reading about how some bands detested being called shoegaze. But yeah, so
Yeah, I think I realized
so
that
that
was.
style of music, it's great. And I'm going to show some bands that are really pioneers of that. So you mentioned Slow Dive. I love Slow Dive. I think and they released an album a few years ago. I think Sugar for the Pill, or I'm not.
Hang on.
If you missed it, you need to check it out. It's really good. But obviously, there it is.
Great album.
It's a great album.
One of the best comeback albums I've heard.
Yes, and I gotta say, that's the first time. That's the first time that I listened to Slow Dive. I didn't know them back then because I was more of I think growing up like in Puerto Rico, and I think they promoted grunge more. So I'm not gonna sit here and lie like, oh yes, I always listen to it, but I think I started listening to more shoegaze in the 2010s. It had like a resurgence.
Yeah.
And if I gotta mention a band that made me fall in love with shoegaze and give it a chance, is this band, Deftones. They're not a shoegaze band, but Deftones really incorporated a lot of shoegaze into some of their albums, like obviously Saturday Night Wrist. If you think of Saturday Night Wrist and Kwai no Yokan, and even this one, Diamond Eyes, it has some shoegaze elements to it. And I think Chino Moreno has obviously a voice that's suited for shoegaze when he's singing slowly, and he's praised it a lot. So I think Deftones I'm like, if Chino Moreno likes it, damn it, I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, and they said, didn't they were influenced by bands like Hum, and Hum is a great shoegaze band.
Hum, talking about Hum, Hum put an album in the 90s that it's very, I want to find, that's the album, You Prefer an Astronaut. It had one hit called Stars, but then it, at that time, 1995, I think there was a shift in music, and it didn't get as much airplay as it should have. It's a great album, and if you try to get that one on vinyl, it's very expensive. It's very hard to find. That's one of my, like, you could say, dark horse albums that I want to buy. And they had a great comeback album, Hum.
Another one, yeah. Another brilliant comeback album.
A brilliant comeback album, and it's sad that the drummer passed away.
He did, didn't he? Was that last year?
Yeah.
Brian St. Pierre. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sad. Another band from the United States that you could consider it that it has a lot of shoegaze influence with space rock is Failure. And Failure put out this album last year, Wild Type Droid. It's an overlooked album because it came out in December of last year, and you know what happens. Dropping an album in December is the kiss of death in sales, because if like you're not gonna be on the end of the album year list, they're not gonna talk about that much, and I'm like, I thought at the end like you should have just like put it out in January or February, but this is a great album, Failure. They had another great album in the 90s that it's another album that is very hard to come by, and it's
I
this
don't know that one, so I'll have to check
Fantastic
it out.
Planet.
Yeah, Failure. I don't know them.
Yeah, it has a song called Another Space Song, and it has a song about a nurse that it's great. I know you would love it, Tom. So yeah, that's another band that I really love. But yeah, talking about like classics, when you think of shoegaze, I think of My Bloody Valentine.
What are you going to say then?
Yeah, there's the album. And the thing about Bloody Valentine, you know, shoegaze has different type of like elements. You have the slow dives that are more of the dream-like type of shoegaze, more reverb, and then you have My Bloody Valentine that has more the distortion. And you know that album came out like very close to Nevermind, and I think it charted like on 27. Not as high as Nevermind, and it went off the radar, but now it's considered a classic. I was looking at the top 10 albums for shoegaze on pitchfork.com, and obviously that's the number one. And I love it. You know, I think it's great, and I love the distortion sounds of that album and the voices. I think it's a shame that it's wasn't as popular as when it released, but
I mean, I know the lengths. The always interesting thing reading up about that album is the lengths that Kevin Shields went to get it the way he wanted it. He didn't go through like 19 recording studios. I read.
So and I think he used like 27, like a lot of engineers, which is like really impressive. Like how you
persistence.
Yeah, very impressive. So Slow Dive, when people think of Slow Dive, I know there's an album that comes to mind, and it's this one. Let me put it like
great album.
Yeah, I was listening to it last night, and something that I love about that album is you can feel the pain, the melancholy. And I couldn't help like listening to that and the melancholy and think like, oh my God, that they influence a band that I love, that it's not shoegaze, but it has shoegaze elements, and it's the Smashing Pumpkins. Like if you listen to some songs here in Smashing Pumpkins, you can definitely listen to some shoegaze elements to it. And of course, Billy Corgan's voice could translate to that sound. It's not shoegaze, but it was influenced shoegaze. You could tell a mile away that the Smashing Pumpkins like that sound, and they came up in the same era. And the band Ride, I thought it was very interesting band, and I went down this rabbit hole, and I discovered a band that I've never heard from before. They're called Swerve Driver. Have you listened to them?
I think I have, but it's been a while since I listened to any of their stuff, so I don't think I could even name a song. Actually, I've not listened to them for a while.
Yeah, so I discovered them, and they were on the top list. This is the album that I listened to. It's called Mezcal Head.
I recognize it, but
what I loved about this album is that it's shoegaze, but it's more like it's a mixture of shoegaze with grunge. So you could call it shoe grunge. Yeah, because it had more distorted, harder songs and more dreamy ones. Like, and I'm telling, I was kicking myself like, why didn't I discover this band in the 90s? Like that, I would have loved it. I was
Just
listening to it
happens,
so
doesn't
much,
it?
like I would get that record. It's
Yeah.
very good, so more underrated. But yeah, so modern bands. This is a modern band from Philadelphia. They're called Nothing, and they released this album last year, and they're very influenced by My Bloody Valentine. So that's another example of a newer band that embraces that shoegaze sound to a T.
Yeah, I know them. What was their? Didn't they release an album in 2016 as well?
Yeah, they have a few albums, and there's one that's very regarded on the list. This one's called The Great Dismal, and it's a great record. And I love the singer. His name is something Palermo. Great voice, and it really has that shoegaze and distortion sound that I love. So I think it's great. So uh, if you like, what do you think? There's other types of like metal bands that having embraced shoegaze. For example, do you know the band Alcest?
Yeah, I love Alcé. Yeah, Alcé or Alceste, French pronunciation, but yeah, I like them a lot. Their album Shelter is the one that is the very kind of dreamy. No, there's no black metal in that one, I don't think. But yeah, you're right. They're a sort of crossover band, aren't they? They sort of fall into the black gaze kind
Yeah,
of category. Like the 2010s has seen shoegaze, I think, merge more with all metal and different styles, hasn't it? A bit more.
yeah. And you know what? You know that Alcest played when I was living in Puerto Rico. They played in 2012 in a small room, and I didn't know them back then. I didn't go.
Oh,
And to this day, I'm like, oh my God, I should have went. I didn't know them at that time. And now I'm like kicking myself, like I should have just gone. But that happens sometimes, but you don't know a band and then you know them and they're like, oh, they played and I never saw them. And that's a great example. Another band that it's calls into the black metal, going with shoegaze, black gaze, and I know a lot of people. There's people that hate them. It's Death Heaven,
yeah,
and
I know
they
them
released
quite well.
this
Yeah,
album Infinite Granite last year,
it's
and
good, pretty
this
good.
one is like pure. This one is like a pure shoegaze album. There's like very little black metal on it. I know there's some YouTubers that trashed it, said it was trash, but you know what? I like to
Oh,
put this album on when I want to chill and relax, and just look at that cover. You know it has to be shoegaze and dreamy.
yeah, they have a tendency for those kind of blurry front covers, don't they? And
Yeah,
yeah, see, I've got a few here, but yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
I
like the My Bloody
actually,
Valentine one is pretty psychedelic, isn't
yeah,
it?
it's
As well?
pretty psychedelic. I actually like I like Death Heaven more now that they embrace more shoegaze style than their black metal stuff. I may be in the minority on that one, but I actually like that style that they play a little bit more. Uh, and shoegaze is all around. You know that there's a band from Puerto Rico that actually plays shoegaze. They're called Unreal, and they released an album this year. I actually interviewed the bass player from the band. He also has another band called Sueño with Belugas, which means I dream of belugas. Uh, and there, when I did that interview, we talked about shoegaze and how shoegaze is interesting because there's a lot of scenes where they bicker and fight, and shoegaze was known as the scene that they all loved each other. All the bands supported each other, so which is interesting. So right now in the UK, how is the shoegaze scene right now?
Really know, to be honest. I don't know enough people really into the genre. I have friends really into metal, but shoegaze is one where I'm a little bit kind of, sort of unsure what the scene's really like. I mean, I'm trying to think now of some UK kind of shoegaze, best apart from the classic bands. I actually would struggle to think of any in particular, really. A lot of the bands I've been getting into recently have been often from like New Zealand, Australia, Sweden, Canada, the US, and Chicago always seems to get a few, I don't know if you realise Chicago gets a few shoegaze bands. There's a little bit of a scene in Chicago, maybe.
Oh yeah, Chicago
Yeah.
has always been
Yeah.
known as a great scene. You know, the Smashing Pumpkins are from
Yeah.
there. Also Disturbed, which has no shoegaze on them, but
There's a
yeah,
band
it's
called Ariel, great shoegaze band from. They had an EP called Winks and Kisses, and I think they were a Chicago band. I hope I've got that right now, but they're a great band
oh,
nevertheless.
I haven't heard them. I would need to check
Oh
them out.
yeah, yeah. Ariel. I can always send you the details afterwards, but they're AIRIEL, I think is their spelling. And they've not done many albums, like a very small number of albums. I think that EP is the one that stands out in my memory because it's got some really good stuff on there. But yeah, they're a really good band. But yeah, as far as going back to your question about the scene in the UK, I really don't know. I have to kind of, I think, really search hard. I mean, like I say, I mean, I don't think I've got really any shoegaze friends, sadly, here at the moment, which would be great if I do ever find a shoegaze friend. I'm just
You'll be like, will you be my friend?
Will you be my shoegaze friend? Shoegazer. Yeah.
Let's shoegaze together.
Although actually, no, I think that's not entirely true. I mean, there've been one or two of my colleagues, I think, before mentioned at work in previous jobs that they like shoegaze. So it's not totally true, but I don't think I've got any in my kind of circle of friends that particularly enjoy or know about it even. Which is, yeah, I mean, considering it's the country where, you know, you had lots of the sort of early cornerstone albums and bands.
This is another one that I really love, the Catherine Will Chrome album. I was listening to that last night, and that one is shoegaze, but I also it felt more like in tune with some. I felt some of like the more grungier elements. Like this band could have been from Seattle too. So, but yeah, that's another great one. I don't know if you know this band, Catherine Will.
Vaguely, another band. I think just name a couple of their songs, big songs, because I think I have heard of some of their bigger.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I really like. I was listening to the album, but I gotta like get to know like the band. They have a song called Chrome, which is on that album, which was pretty cool. Crank is another one.
That's the one. That's the one I know. Crank.
Yeah, Crank. That's the one that's if you go to Spotify, that's like the #1 track.
Yeah, I think that's the one I know. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another band that was pretty highly regarded, and they're called Lush. And this album,
yeah, I like them.
Yeah, it's more, you know, they're the women singing. They have two singers, and it's pretty like very dreamy.
Yeah, very dreamy. They're quite catchy. Some of them quite poppy, aren't they, as well?
Yeah.
In a way, for a shoegaze band. I think some of their songs.
I think they inspire a lot of bands, especially one that comes to mind. I don't know if you know them, Cigarettes After Sex.
Yeah, I know them as well. Yeah,
and I think I think if I'm not mistaken, I could be. I think they're from Chicago. I'm not sure, but yeah, they're kind of dreamy. And actually, Señorita Sabrosura has seen them live.
Oh, really? Were they good?
Yeah, she told me that they were great. You know, and I just love the name because you know it's you listen to it and that's what it feels like. It feels like you would listen to that after sex and enjoy a cigarette, like back in the 90s when smoking cigarettes was cool. Right now, no. Like I put a disclosure here, kids, if you're watching this video, do not smoke cigarettes. They don't get you high, and they can give you cancer. Disclaimer. But yeah, I think this could be a series that we could like do more type of shoegaze videos. Maybe like we could do something where we'd like talk about a specific band. And I think we should invite Señorita Sabrosura to collaborate with us because she loves this genre and she has some great knowledge. And I think that the dynamic would be great. So I think we are getting, you know, to the end of this video. Please, people, if you haven't subscribed to the Green Man channels, do. He's got some great album reviews. We sometimes review the same albums, but that happens, but different point of views. He also he has some playthroughs. He has some songs that he plays guitar. Unlike me, he has some talent in music. Those I just critique it, but I can't play it. And he also talks about sci-fi and books. So if you like sci-fi and books, which I do, so sometimes I haven't seen your book videos because I haven't read the book. I'm like,
Yeah. It's all
but
Malazan at the moment. So if you're a nerd, if you're a sci-fi fantasy nerd,
oh
or you
yeah,
like,
I can send you. There's some books that I read that I interest you, so I will send that to you offline. But yeah, subscribe to his channel. Help him grow. He's like in 200 and something, 40 something. So let's get him to 300. And also, if you are new to my channel, if you like, and you feel inclined to it, subscribe to my channel. I have different types of things for everyone. I don't only talk about metal. I talk about different genres, and I
shoegaze.
also do the what?
Shoegaze.
Yeah, even shoegaze. That's why I didn't name the I couldn't name the page or the channel the Shield Dude on a Couch Does Metal, because that would have been limited. I'm like, no, I want to be broader. So don't forget to subscribe. And coming up on my channel, I got another collaboration videos that are coming soon, and more album reviews. So keep watching, and until next time, this is Hector, the Shield on a Couch, and the Green Man. And we'll see you next time for another collaboration video. Thank you and good night.